together with Ed Scale Up, identified this crucial issue and created an innovative technological platform named Agrithon. Agrithon is a challenging platform that caters to a wide range of participants from school students to industry professionals. It will solve most of the challenging issues in the agricultural sector by hosting the first ever mega agritech hackathon in Sri Lanka. The innovative agritech solutions which would emerge through Agrithon will be directed to reach the next levels for the successful implementation process, consequently building a sustainable agritech ecosystem in Sri Lanka. To help you become the next agritech expert, Agrithon brings you a series of webinars conducted by experts in the field that would provide in-depth knowledge and understanding about agritech. Today we have with us Mr. Miller Rajendran, the CEO of Sense Agro. Established in 2014, Sense Agro utilizes the Internet of Things to revolutionize the agricultural industry. The company offers many programs from crop-specific intelligence platform to advanced soil sensor technology. Mr. Miller has had a mission to enable farmers and commercial agricultural firms to make data-informed plantation management decisions so that they can achieve higher yields using the right amount of resources, thus avoiding wastage. Mr. Miller is willing today to answer any questions that our audience has with relevance to agritech and its potential in Sri Lanka. Today, Mr. Miller Rajendran will use his experience and sound knowledge to provide insights into the emergence of agritech in Sri Lanka. Sir, the platform is now yours.
Thank you so much, Famida, for this kind words. And first of all, very good morning to everyone, and great job by Rotaract Club of New University. So you guys are doing a great things on the right time on the scenario. So, so this today I'm just here. So with a quarter page script and kind of 4 slides if needed. But I'm not sure whether this 1.5 hours would be enough if you can talk about the opportunities in agriculture, demands, and technologies. So I love to get much as possible questions from the audience, so young entrepreneurs. So without give much information about my company and give a self promotion, because I want to see you guys as my competitor down the line. So without much information, so I'm working on this industry for last 4 5 years and working with farmers and pretty much living with farmers in the end. And I'm a third generation farmer, very proud about it. So become an engineer. So I very happy to support where I'm coming from. So just want to give a couple of glimpses. So the overall picture of the domain. So the context of this presentation will be give you some idea the way you can think without giving any directions where we want to develop something, but to give some ideas about how this the format of hackathon, what are the aspects you need to think through and consider when you are developing a product. Then the overall picture, if you want to make this product into a company and you want to sustain with it, so give you an idea about the overall picture, how about opportunities and so on. Then lead you towards how you can structure it and what are the struggles we faced, where you probably piggyback on my journey and take it forward in an easy manner. So I always looking into the chat box. If you guys have any question, please feel free to text me in, because don't need to consider like a company or a different aspect. So I was a graduate 4 5 years back, so it's I'm in the same boat. So you don't want to worry about anything. Just feel free to ask on the chat. I will be always looking into. Right. So in the format of hackathon, I want you to consider only 4 parameters, 4 interesting factors that you need to keep it in your mind. You can match into one of those if you want to build a product for the agritech space before getting into the overall pictures. So in the format of hackathon, please consider about the impact you are producing. So your outcome supposed to based on four parameters. It could be the impact you are creating in terms of climate, in terms of the land reservations or water or pest usage, pesticide usages, and so on. So it could be on impact oriented. There is a segment you can think about. Or so just think throughout the presentation. So these are the point you need to consider how you can evaluate on these parameters, right? First is impact. Second one, the number of beneficiaries, how many household, how many individuals get benefit out of this technology, whether it's going to be one for an individual or an individual organization or for a huge farming cluster or a ecosystem. So, third point you can focus on to develop something would be the financial conversion. If it's mainly focusing on B2B environment, just like us, it could be on financial conversion you can talk about. So, the fourth one, the convenience, easiness, and time serving and effort serving on by utilizing your technology or utilizing your solution to this agriculture problems. So just keep these 4 points in your mind. So throughout the presentation, I will give you an overall picture. So if you have an idea already, so you can match how you can fit it into these four categories. That would be the easiest job. There are a million ways, but these four are considered very well, and there are huge opportunities. It pretty much it's the market is already enabled for these four categories: impact, financial conversion, number of beneficiaries, and time and convenience. So try to match on these factors. So let's getting into the presentation. So give you a glimpse. So this is a global environment right now. So as Famida perfectly mentioned, by 2050, almost 70 percentage of our population, I mean, we need to produce 70 percentage more food to feed our population. It will be like 10 billion people around the world. So what we have right now, it's completely not enough. Even today, it's not enough. We need to produce 70 percentage more food to feed the entire world, at least the mankind I'm talking about. So if that's the case, whether we have enough resources in terms of arable land. So if you take 1950s to now, we only survived, we have only preserved 30 percentage of our arable land throughout the world. So imagine if it's 2050, that could be definitely reduced into 5 or 10 percentage because of urbanization and real estate and multiple requirements are there. So with less resources, we need to produce more. That's what the only equation that we have. So the demand was very simple. It's not, there's no question at all whether you need to optimize the agriculture way it works. Obviously, yes, because we need to produce more with less resources what we had before. So how you justify it, where you are placing your technology, which audience going to use your technology, that's define whether your technology or your application is needed on this ground, right? So give you a picture like US or the global Western developed countries, we can say. So the developed countries have a very small population of the country working on agriculture. So they mainly focusing on producing more and producing only the sufficient enough food for the country and less number of people working on. For example, US only 3% of the population working on agriculture. But if you take Sri Lankan context, over 30% of our population directly depend on agriculture. So western part of the world or the developed countries, they use the, the emerging countries as pretty much for the value addition. So all their basic food needs like corn or their wheat productions and all happening in-house mostly, and like value addition like cocoa for chocolate production, tea production, obviously us. So these kind of things were pushed towards emerging market. So it's a huge different market what we are working on. I'm not saying it's democratic, but that's the way it works at the moment. People with more power, they define what we grow at what stage. Their production is completely depend on improving productivity with less number of people. So involving technology on agriculture was very big on their context. So it's very common using sensor technology, what I'm doing in your field, if it's on US or Israel or if it's in Netherlands. But if you're using technology in Sri Lanka, which is state of the art technology, you can pride about it, but give you the glimpse, it's not easy. First question you will get from the farmer, I'm doing it for more than 50 years. What you going to do beyond it? We have a like conventional practice which is date back for 2000 years. Your first struggle, if you building a product or want to become a company, you want to face your clients mentality and clients proof of concept. That's not
நான்
simple.
பேசுவேன் நீ போலோன்னு அப்ப நான் சொன்னா சொல்லுவா சாரிடுவா
Okay, Amna, can you mute your mic? Yeah. Okay, so that's where it's working on. So you need to think the context of the farmer where you want to place, whether it's going to be a US product or a Netherlands product, or is it a Sri Lankan or subcontinent product. So if you are defining the subcontinent, you need to think about the empathy of the farmer. You need to think with the farmer's shoes, right? So that's the most important part when you are developing a product from the context. So we have plenty of struggles. I mean, plenty of requirements need to be fulfilled before getting in any technologies. So that's the overall picture when you are building a product. These are things you need to consider about. But let me explain about the opportunity. So the opportunity starting with the demand, as explained before, the demand for producing more with less, it's ultimately important. Second thing, preserving your ecosystem and the biodiversity. So our practices worked along with the biodiversity for years, for millennia. But with confusing modern technology, what we are using to produce more with pesticide, modern technologies, or like at least like a tractor. So this is not completely merged with our conventional practices. Farmers want to do planting by hand. At the same time, they want to put pesticide or fertilizers, which is chemical. So this cannot go along with it. So you need to have the biggest barrier what we making on this confusion of modern technologies and the conventional practices. Low productivity was uniform throughout the region. Throughout Asia Pacific, this ununiform and low productivity fields happening drastically. So those are kind of opportunity as technologists or solution providers, but these are some of the problems you can touch on. Especially if you take South Korea for the same variety of paddy variety, or for 1 acres of land space or 1 hectares of land space, the productivity is 6 tons. But if you take Sri Lankan context, the average is less than 1.5 tons. So that's the gap we try to fill with technology. So that's one area you can think about. But in the global point of view, so in terms of investment is so big in agriculture technology. There are plenty of segments. If you take sensors are one, drone you're probably aware of. So there are plenty of other aspects you can think about, like autonomous technologies, completely removing the human from seeding to harvesting, completely everything going autonomous. Between satellite technologies and drone technology, there is now a new trend going space microbots, micro satellites. This is go fly below the satellite, but it's more reliable than a drone and less expensive compared to a drone because it's stabilized for throughout the year, throughout your harvesting period, on top of your farm, and it's observe your farm 24/7. Remote sensing without a gap. So it's better than a drone, but it's not clarity enough like a drone. So there are plenty of opportunities coming based on the demand. So these are big overall pictures. And if you give a glimpse on the investment, there are concepts called AG funders. So agriculture investment focused investors are available throughout the world. If you take last year 2019, I just come across this statistic. So last year only India invest over 250 million dollars on startups who are focusing on agriculture. For an example, 1 week back, a platform called Cropping Technologies, they raised 20 million dollars to creating farming ecosystem on software based, a SaaS platform. So even in our ecosystem, the investment investors find out this is the opportunity way going forward. Because whenever, if you're observing the opportunities, are you supposed to observe the rich people where they are investing on? So this is the domain we're supposed to be at this era where people are investing on. So you are in the right point at right time. It's a good time where you can start something in your own, but it's completely up to you, like whether you're going to take it as a company or whether it's only for this hackathon. So I'm very keen if you can take this as a company. The opportunities are so big. So, if you think in a perspective of taking this as a company, so I gave you a small overall picture. There are opportunities, but you can think a niche market where you can pile up on top of it going forward. You start with very small environment, a focused group of audience, because they are the people going to pay money. You're supposed to eat to live. In that sense, your company is supposed to have a sustainable business model. If that's the case, you're supposed to build for a niche audience where you can capture easily, you can identify them easily, and direct your product based on it. So from that, you can build multiple crop varieties or multiple organization designs in later stages. But if you think for the entire farming audience, it will be a mess. So that's just a warning I want to give it to you whenever you're thinking about a product or a solution you are going forward in this hackathon. So if you're planning to start something in Sri Lanka, that's a fantastic opportunity. The reason we started in Sri Lanka, obviously we are in Sri Lanka, we are living in Sri Lanka, one thing. But the biggest picture here, Sri Lanka have a fantastic audience pool, which is very closer behavior to close to 2 billion people's audience, very close by. South Asia and Southeast Asia, we have over 2 billion people, 2 billion audience. If you are experimenting and successful in Sri Lanka, that product can be easily replicated, not in a marketing perspective, in terms of a people product market fit that can be replicated throughout the region without an issue. And we have a higher literacy level, so adaptation of smartphone and all, it is very big. And especially in the farming community, if you are focusing on, so before COVID, the numbers of smartphone usages is less than 17 percentage in agriculture, but after COVID that improved to 40 percentage. The reason was, when you're farming, farmers, people, as kids started to using Zoom calls just like this. They're supposed to adapt to a smart technology like a phone or a computer or something. So smartphone is the closest option, and now the smartphone penetration is 40% improved within the farming audience. So you have bigger opportunity to squeeze some technologies in within the agriculture context. So that's where the opportunities are lies in. Then you need to understand few things where our agriculture, Sri Lankan agriculture ecosystem works. So first thing, so Sri Lankan ecosystem, uh, yeah. Do you have a question? Dinek, do you have a question? Okay. So Sri Lankan agriculture ecosystem works in a very unique way. Yes, Sen. Interesting. Okay. So if you take the western part of the world, the agriculture ecosystem is very unique. They have enough they have enough land space where individuals can create over 100 acres or 300 acres of land space, and one owner, it's happening large audience pool, large scale farming. So they can make a decision where they're adapting a technology, whether they're going for new modification, whether they want to buy a John Deere machinery to run their farm. But in Sri Lankan context, or the South Asia, Asia Pacific context, the number of farmers are huge, but the acreage per farmer is very small. We call it a smallholder. A smallholder is the majority. Almost 85 to 90% of the agriculture ecosystem run through smallholder. It's a very complicated, very hard to penetrate market. But if you can find out a way, that's the best option you can achieve for. because these smallholders own maximum of 1 to 2 hectares of land space. They do whatever the crop they are working on. Mostly are conventional farmers. They have tradition of farming for generations. And if you can build something common to support one particular crop solution, that would work. But because barrier, like countries like Sri Lanka, that agriculture ecosystem is not individualized, or it's not clusters in, it's not decision making not happen through an individual, not like a western part of the world, because they own a huge farm and they can put the investment. But for the farmers and in Sri Lanka, it's very well connected with the government to a huge chain of agriculture ecosystem, starting from the ministry, then different provincial departments, district wise departments, crop specific department, and resources coming, subsidies and resources dependency in agriculture government bodies. Then the first touch point for the farmers end, it's an agrarian or a extension officer or a AI agro inspector from the government. So if you want to reach out the farmer, you need to come across the entire chain. It's a very complicated and it's a huge chain to reach out a particular farmer. So you can't just directly marketing something to an individual. So you use acquisition. If you're targeting individually, it was so big because individuals are very well connected. You can probably convince one farmer. You're supposed to put the exact same effort to convince another farmer to cover 300 acres. If it's in USA, it will be one farmer you need to capture on. But in Sri Lanka, to cover 300 acres, you need to reach out at least 100 farmers or a farming organization level. So it's a very well connected hierarchy. It's very hard to getting into this industry by convincing individuals. So don't think I'm building a solution tomorrow. The farmers, entire farming network, going to adapt that. So think through how you're going to reach out. So the best recommendation, what we learned, reaching out through ecosystems. So there are ecosystems like farming organizations. Like if you take uh, let's say paddy farmers in Anuradhapura, it's surrounded by pond based or water reservoir based farming organization. They have meetings. They have 100 to 200 farmers get together in one particular meeting, and they utilize one reservoir for their water resource requirement. So that's an organization you can reach out. If you can give a solution, it will be adapted by 200 people at once. But it's not that easy to reach out. If that cluster works, then you can replicate to other ecosystem. You can think in that aspect. Spice farmers association, tea planters association, smallholder tea planters, or coconut association. Every single crop in Sri Lanka have association. Vegetable farmers, seed production, even every single association sort of represent hundreds of farmers today. So if you think a business model around it, I would highly recommend, that is not a written format. I would highly recommend think through an ecosystem to go getting into the farmer's end, or else if you are trying to reach individual farmers to convince, it's very hard to convince. It's not that it's a little bit put it in this way. Even if you convince one farmer easily, but you want to replicate the same procedure for 100 farmers to reach that 300 acres, which is an average farming land size in US. It's not like convincing one farmer. Hope that convinced. So that's one important part. Second thing, the capital expense. In Sri Lankan context, a paddy farmer, the majority. So the paddy farmers earn less than, let's say, $400 as profit after the complete harvest. So if you invest on 1 acre land space, you're supposed to put a smallholder's average land space. You're supposed to put close to 300,000 rupees. So this 300,000 will convert into 360 to say 380,000 rupees as a harvesting after you selling out your goods. So that means for that 60,000 rupees, only you're working for 3.5 months. That's the crop rotation cycle. So per month, a farmer averagely taking profit close to 20,000 rupees maximum. In this 20,000 rupees, if you want to squeeze a technology in, you need to consider how much percentage you're going to taking out of it, because that's the entire profit base he getting out. So the household daily requirement and all these expenses are depend on that. So there are 10 questions. Let me squeeze into Mhm. Okay, if you guys recommend in singular, I'm not sure whether it's possible. So I can go in singular also, but I want to get your attention like from Famida. Can I get a small polling like which is the recommended language to go forward? Singular, Tamil, or English?
You can continue in English, sir.
Yeah, I get some recommendation to go in singular also, so that's fine. So I try to match in both ends if you want.
Yes, sir. If you can handle it in both languages.
Sure, cool.
Thank you, sir.
So මම ඔයගලන්ට දැන් බ්‍රීෆ් එකක් දෙන්න සිංහලෙන් කොහොමද දැන් මම කියපු දේවල්. දැන් ඔයගලන් කතා කර දැන් ප්ලෑන් කරන්නේ ෆාමර්ස්ලා ඩිරෙක්ට්ලි රීච් වෙන්න නම් so ලංකාවට අයිති ටෙක්නොලොජියක් අදනවා නම් ලංකාවේ ෆාමර්ස් රීච් කරන එක එච්චර ලේසි නෑ. ලංකාවෙන් ෆාමර්ස් කෙනෙක් රීච් කරන එක ඇමරිකාවෙන් ෆාමර් කෙනෙක් රීච් කරන එකට වඩා හරිම අමාරුයි. අපේ කන්වෙන්ෂනල් ඇග්‍රිකල්චර් ප්‍රැක්ටිසස් යනවා අවුරුදු 2000කට වැඩිය. so දැන් මේ වගේ ප්‍රැක්ටිස් එකක් ඕගලන් කරනවා නම් ඇමරිකාවෙන් ෆාමර් එක්කෙනෙක් ඔයා රීච් වුණොත් ඔයාට පුළුවන් 300 acres වගේ ලෑන්ඩ් එකකට සොලියුෂන් එකක් දෙන්න. එක ෆාමර් එතන ස්මෝල් හෝල්ඩර් කියන concept එක හරිම අඩුයි. ඒත් ලංකාව වගේ රටක සවුත් ඒෂියා නැත්නම් ඒෂියා පැසිෆික් රටවල් ගත්තොත් එහෙම එතන තියෙන ලොකුම ප්‍රශ්නේ අපේ ස්මෝල් හෝල්ඩර්ස්ලාගේ percentage එක 90ට වඩා වැඩි. ඒ හින්දා දැන් එක ෆාමර් කෙනෙක්ට තියන්නේ 1.5 acres to 2 acre land space එකක් විතරයි. මේ වගේ land space එකක් cover කරලා ටෙක්නොලොජියක් දෙනකොට අපි එක ෆාමර් කෙනෙක් convince කරොත් අපි දැන් ඇමරිකාවේ තියෙන 300 acres මෙතන cover කරනවා නම් අපිට farmersලා 100 දෙනෙක් onboard කරන්න ඕන අපේ platform එකට. 100 දෙනෙක් කියන්නේ ලේසි දෙයක් නෙමෙයි. customer acquisition කියන්නේ එච්චර ලේසි දෙයක් නෙමෙයි. replicate කරන්න ඕන procedures 100 වරක් ඒ කොච්චරක් ඒක වැඩ කරායිද කොච්චර කාලයක් ගන්නවද කියන එක එච්චර ලේසි නෙමෙයි. so හොඳම recommendation එක ඔයගලන් එක product එකක් launch කරන්න යන ලංකාවට නම් farming ecosystem එකක් අනුව think කරන්න. ඒ කියන්නේ ලොකු cluster එකක්. දැන් paddy farmers ගොවියන්ගේ cluster එකක් නම් ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ මේ reservoir එකක් තියාගෙන දැන් අනුරාධපුර හිතන්නකෝ අනුරාධපුරේ තියෙන reservoir එකක් තියාගෙන ඒකෙන් වතුර භාවිතා කරන farmersලාගේ cluster එකක් ඔයගොල්ලන් think කරොත් එතන farmersලා 100 දෙනෙක් විතර ඉන්නවා. අක්කර 200ක් 300ක් cover වෙනවා. දැන් මේ අක්කර 200 300 ඇමරිකාවෙන් ගත්තොත් එක farmer කෙනෙක් ගාව තියෙනවා. අපිට එච්චර land නැහැ. ලෝකෙ කොහෙවත් තියන්න නැති ෆාමර්ස්ලා අපි ගාව තියෙනවා. ඒත් අපි ගාව ලෑන්ඩ් නැහැ ඒ සොලියුෂන් එක එක්සැක්ට්ලි ඒ වගේ අදන්න. so ඇමරිකාවෙන් තියෙන නැත්නම් නෙදර්ලන්ඩ් වල තියෙන ෆාමින් ටෙක්නොලොජි එකක් අරගෙන ඒම මෙතනට රිප්ලිකේට් කරන්න බෑ. ඒම ඔයගොල්ලන්ට කරන්න පුළුවන් නම් දැන් අවුරුදු 20ක් වෙනවා දැන් සෙන්සර් ටෙක්නොලොජිස් ආවිලා ඉස්රායල් වලින් යූස් කරන්න. ඩ්‍රිප් ඉරිගේෂන් ගත්තොත් එහෙම ඩ්‍රිප් ඉරිගේෂන් අවුරුදු 8ක් වෙනවා ලෝකෙට ආවිල්ලා දැන් ලංකාවේ 8%ක්වත් නැහැ ඩ්‍රිප් ඉරිගේෂන් යූස් කරපු ෆාම්ස් 8%ක් මං කියන්නේ. එතකොට ඇඩැප්ටේෂන් කරනකොට ඒක එක්සැක්ට්ලි මෙතන රිප්ලිකේට් කරන්න බෑ අපිට. අපේ ලංකාවට කියලා අපේ ලෝකලයිස්ඩ් කරන්න ඕන ටෙක්නොලොජි ලැන්ග්වේජ් හැමදේම. so ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ බිස්නස් මොඩල් එක සක්සස් වෙන එකයි ෆේල් වෙන එකයි කම්ප්ලීට්ලි ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ ලෝකලයිසේෂன் ෆැක්ටර් එකේ තමයි ඩිපෙන්ඩ් වෙන්නේ. මං දන්නේ කොච්චර දෙනෙක් දෙමළෙන් මෙතන ඉන්නවද කියලා. என்ன சொன்னேன்டா இவ்வளவு நாள் எங்களோட ஃபார்மிங் டெக்னாலஜி உலகம் முழுக்க இருக்குது. பல வருஷமா கிட்டத்தட்ட 20 வருஷமா இஸ்ரேலில் இருக்கிற டெக்னாலஜி 60 வருஷமா இஸ்ரேல் ட்ரிப் இரிகேஷன் மாதிரியான டெக்னாலஜிஸ் கொடுக்குது. சென்சர் டெக்னாலஜிஸ் 20 வருஷத்துக்கு மேலே இருக்குது. ட்ரோன் டெக்னாலஜி முதல் 10 வருஷத்துக்கு மேலே ட்ரோன் டெக்னாலஜி யூஎஸ்ல இருந்து நெதர்லாண்ட்ல இருந்து எல்லாம் யூஸ் பண்ணுறாங்க. பட் அந்த டெக்னாலஜி ஏன் இலங்கைக்கோ இல்லைனா சவுத் ஈஸ்ட் ஏஷியன் கான்டினென்ட்டுக்கோ இன்னும் வந்து சேர இல்லைன்றதுக்கு முக்கியமான காரணமாக இருக்கிறது ஃபினான்ஷியல் மாடல்ன்றதை விட அதுக்கான காசுன்றதை விட இதுக்கான கேப் அந்த லோக்கலைசேஷன் சொல்கிற ஃபேக்டர் தான் எங்களோட ஃபார்மர்ஸோட பாயிண்ட் ஆஃப் வியூவில் அந்த டெக்னாலஜி ரிலவெண்ட் இல்லை. முக்கியமாக இப்போ அமெரிக்காவை எடுத்தீங்கன்னா அங்கே ஒரு ஃபார்மர் 300 ஏக்கர் லேண்ட் ஓன் பண்ணுவான். ஸோ ஒருத்தரை கன்வின்ஸ் பண்ணால் எங்களோட டெக்னாலஜி ஒரு 300 பேருக்கு போடலாம், 300 ஏக்கருக்கு கவர் பண்ணலாம். ஸோ லேண்ட் ஸ்பேஸ் படி தான் எங்களோட டெக்னாலஜியோட எக்ஸ்பென்ஸ் இருக்குதுன்னா. இதுவே இலங்கையை பொறுத்தவரையில் நம்பர் ஆஃப் பெனிஃபிஷரிஸ் அதிகமாக இருக்கலாம். ஒரு 300 ஃபார்மர்ஸ் கரெக்ட் பண்ணால் மட்டும் தான் எங்களுக்கு 300 ஏக்கர் போகலாம். ஸோ ஸ்மால் ஹோல்டர்ஸ் நம்பர்ஸ் அதிகமாக இருக்கிறதால பெஸ்ட் ஆப்ஷன் ஒரு ஈகோசிஸ்டம் ஓரியன்டான ஒரு பிஸ்னஸ் மாடலை பில்ட் பண்ணுறது. ஸோ உங்களோட டெக்னாலஜி எதுவாக வேணாமல் இருக்கலாம். ஆனால் இப்போது உதாரணமாக ஒரு பெரிய ஃபார்மிங் கிளஸ்டர்ஸ் ஸ்பைஸ் ஃபார்மர்ஸ் ஆர்கனைசேஷன் இல்லைனா டீ பிளான்டர்ஸுக்கான ஆர்கனைசேஷன் ஒன்று போனீங்கன்னா அதுக்குள்ளே ஒரு 300 டீ பிளான்டர்ஸ் ஸ்மால் ஹோல்டர்ஸ் இருப்பாங்க. ஒரு 2 ஏக்கர்ஸ் லேண்ட் ஓனர்ஸ் இருக்கக்கூடும். ஸோ அவங்கள ரீச் பண்ணுறது மூலமாக ஒரு 300 ஃபார்மர் ரீச் பண்ணால் உங்களுக்கு 500 ஏக்கர் கவர் பண்ணலாம். ஆனால் ஒரே நேரத்தில் கவர் பண்ணலாம் அசோசியேஷன்ஸ் ஓரியன்டாக. ஏன்னா எங்களோட ஹைரார்கிக்கல் செயின் மினிஸ்ட்ரியிலேருந்து ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணி கடைசியாக ஒரு எக்ஸ்டென்ஷன் ஆஃபீஸர் வரைக்கும் ஃபார்மரோட ரீச் பண்ணுறது கம்ப்ளீட்லி கவர்மெண்ட் ஓரியன்ட் ஒரு செயினாக தான் இருக்குது. ஸோ உங்களோட பிஸ்னஸ் மாடல் டெக்னாலஜின்றதை விட டெக்னாலஜி 5% அதுக்கு சரௌண்டிங்கில் நீங்கள் கொடுக்குற எக்ஸ்டர்னல் ஃபேக்டர்ஸ் அந்த பில்டிங் பிளாக்ஸ் தான் உங்களோட சக்ஸஸ் அண்ட் ஃபெயிலியர்ஸை தீர்மானிக்கும். Hope that's summarized a little bit. So let's get into the second option. After you're designing, you're choosing your exact business model, choosing your exact audience pool, choosing your segment, how you're going to reach out. Then the technology comes in. Doesn't matter whether you are putting technology which is so high tech, the state of the art technologies. So we working on a technology which is 20-year-old, a sensor-based precision agriculture, but for Sri Lankan context it's fairly new. So that's where we seems like a pioneer on sensor technology in Sri Lanka. But this exact sensor technology is used by Israel and Netherlands for years right now. So the localization adaptation took 20 years to reach out Sri Lanka. That's the real scenario it's all about. So bringing down the new technologies doesn't matter that going to be used by farmer. Maybe the time period was reduced because of the expansion of technology, but it's take huge time to adapt and farmers getting used to it. So it's always like a revolution starting from the industrial revolution towards data-driven revolution. So if you're going towards a data-driven revolution, our adaptation was slow. We need to admit that. So we need to accept the market factor. We can't change the ecosystem as a startup from the day one. It's take a huge effort, right? So in that sense, think about exact requirement and build the technology. It's very vague and everyone talk about it. Look at the farmer's requirement and then build the technology, but it's actually the important depth of it. So there are plenty of requirements need to be built in Sri Lankan context, but we are thinking a leapfrog, way ahead of what things as an active, bringing drones, bringing satellite technology, bringing a space micro satellites, bringing soil sensing, bringing autonomous vehicles. These are so good. Bringing hydroponic technologies and all. These are so good. But the only problem whether we're going to adapt it, whether there are 100 things we need to fulfill before getting into this particular stage. Right? So දැන් අපි ඉතන විදිහට දැන් ටෙක්නොලොජි එක ගේන්න ඕනේ නම් අපේ කන්ටෙක්ස්ට් එකට දැන් ලෝකෙ පුරා තියෙනවා ටෙක්නොලොජි ඕන තරම් සැටලයිට් ටෙක්නොලොජි තියෙනවා ඩ්‍රෝන්ස් තියෙනවා ස්පේස් මයික්‍රෝ ඩ්‍රෝන්ස් තියෙනවා ස්වාම්ප් රොබෝට් කියන දේවල් තියෙනවා ඔටෝනමස් වෙහිකල්ස් තියෙනවා ලේසර් ටෙක්නොලොජින් වීට් කිල් කරන දේවල් තියෙනවා හයිඩ්‍රොෆෝනික් හෙරොෆෝනික් ඒ වගේ ටෙක්නොලොජිස් ගොඩක් තියෙනවා ඕන ස්ටේට් ඔෆ් ද හාර්ට් ටෙක්නොලොජියක් අපිට මෙතන ලංකාවට ගේන්න පුළුවන් කිසි ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැ ඒ මාකට් ඇඩැප්ටේෂන් එකක් තියෙයිද කියන දේ completely depend on farmers point. Then අපිට 100 technologies මේ දැන් අපි අන්තිමට tractor adapt කරා නම් tractor එකට පස්සේ 100ක් විතර තියෙනවා අපිට adapt කරලා අපි මේ leapfrog එකට එන්න. Or else අපි completely leapfrog එකක් වෙනවා data driven business model එකට. මේ ecosystem change කරන දේ අපේ හතේ නැහැ. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි startup එකක් හැටියට day 1 එකේ ඒක වෙන්නේ නැහැ. අපිට අවුරුදු ගානක් ගන්න ඒ ecosystem awareness එක create කරලා ඒකෙන් technology build කරනවා කියන්නේ ඉතින් ලේසි දෙයක් නෙමෙයි. So අපිට ගොඩක් කරන්න තියෙනවා technology wise improve කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඒත් අපි state of the art විතරක් think කරන එකට වඩා පොඩි දේවල් මම examples ටිකක් කියන්නම් ඊට පස්සේ ඒ වගේ දේවල් වලින් focus කරන එක ගොඩක් වටිනවා. ඒක ඇඩැප්ටේෂන් එකක් රික්වයර්මන්ට් එකක් දැන් ඊසි ඉම්ප්ලිමන්ට් කරන්න පුළුවන්. අපි ඉතන දේවල් දැන් අපි எக்ஸ்பெரிமெண்ட் කරන දේවල් තමයි ඔයගලන්ට මම කියන්න යන්නේ. ஸோ இப்போ பார்த்தீங்கன்னா இப்போ நிறைய டெக்னாலஜிஸ் இருக்கு உலகம் முழுக்க இப்போ சேட்டலைட்டாக இருக்கலாம் ட்ரோன் டெக்னாலஜி ஸ்பேஸ் டெக்னாலஜிஸாக இருக்கலாம் சென்சர்ஸ் ஹைட்ரோபோனிக் எந்த டெக்னாலஜி இருந்தாலும் எங்களோட ஃபார்ம் ஃபீல்ட்ஸுக்குள்ள இப்போ இதை கொண்டு வர போகிறோமா இப்போ யூஎஸ்ல யூஸ் பண்ணுறான் நெதர்லாண்டில் யூஸ் பண்ணுறான் இஸ்ரேலில் யூஸ் பண்ணுறான் எங்களுக்கும் அது உடனே செட் ஆகுமா இதுதான் பெரிய ஒரு கேள்வி. அக்டெக்னு நாங்கள் கூகுளில் சர்ச் பண்ணதும் கிரான்ச் பேஸ் மாதிரியான சைட்ஸில் உங்களுக்கு கிட்டத்தட்ட ஆயிரக்கணக்கான கம்பெனிஸோட ப்ரொஃபைல்ஸ் கிடைக்கும். அட்வான்ஸ் அக்ரிகல்ச்சர் டெக்னாலஜி ஸ்டார்ட் அப்ஸ் இஸ்ரேலில் மட்டும் 400க்கு மேலே இருக்குது. ஸோ இந்த ஸ்டார்ட் அப்ஸ் எல்லாத்தையும் பார்த்தா அவங்களோட ஒரு ப்ராடக்ட் இங்கே ரிப்ளிகேட் பண்ணலாம் அப்படின்னு ஒரு ஐடியா இருந்ததுன்றா நீங்கள் இன்னொரு விஷயம் திங்க் பண்ணணும். ட்ரிப் இரிகேஷன் டெக்னாலஜி வந்து 60 வருஷம் ஆகுது. இலங்கையில் அது 8% கூட இன்னும் ஃபுல்ஃபில் ஆகலை. ஸோ எப்படி எங்களோட அட்வான்ஸ் டெக்னாலஜி ஃபார்மர்ஸ் அடாப்ட் பண்ண போகிறான்ன்றது நாங்கள் திங்க் பண்ணணும். பட் ஆனால் இந்த 20 வருஷ கேப்பில் இஸ்ரேல் டெக்னாலஜியோ இல்லைன்னா ஆஃப்ரிக்காலேயோ இல்லைன்னா யூஎஸ்லேயோ ஒரு அக்ரிகல்ச்சர் டெக்னாலஜி ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ண டைம்ல இருந்து இது வரைக்கும் டைம் பீரியட்ல ஒரு கிராஜுவலான ஒரு டெக்னாலஜி க்ரோத் வந்திருக்கு. அந்த க்ரோத் நிறைய விஷயங்கள் நாங்கள் ஆல்ரெடி மிஸ் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கிறோம். ஸோ அதை எனேபிள் பண்ணுறதுலே உங்களோட அக்ரிடெக்ன்ற ஃபீல்ட் நிறைய இன்புட்ஸை கொடுக்கக்கூடியதாக இருக்கும். ஸோ ஸ்டேட் ஆஃப் த ஆர்ட் டெக்னாலஜிஸ், எஸ், அதுக்கு தான் நாங்கள் மூவ் பண்ணணும். நிறைய ப்ரொடக்டிவிட்டி இருக்குது. பட் அதுக்கு முதல்ல நாங்கள் ஃபார்மர்ஸ் அடாப்ட் பண்ண வேண்டியதுக்கான ஈஸி டெக்னாலஜிஸ், இம்பார்ட்டன்ட் டெக்னாலஜிஸ் சில விஷயங்கள் இருக்குது. ஸோ next I'm going to explain a little bit of examples where similar countries like us adapted to agriculture and technology adaptation through gradual growth, not like a leapfrog from straight away from conventional agriculture using buffaloes to do plowing and suddenly jump into aeroponic. That's not the case. It's pretty hard. So a gradual growth supposed to be there. So I want to explain. I'm just asking a few questions. Do you know any payment mechanisms where farmers can directly get paid available in Sri Lanka? If you do something and you're harvesting something, you just put your harvest into manning market and the selling happens. Whether simply then they get paid after payment without going to the field. No, there's no proper marketplace, there's no proper payment mechanism. Without these two factors, farmers and the buyers, between that there are more than 50 different stakeholders playing, middleman stakeholders. So this is one of the major factors where farmers not get the important benefits. So these middlemen are important to make your supply chain enable, make your product quality checking happens, make your product to reach the right the farm to fork traceable platforms, making enable where the product from the farms to your table, reaching out your table, it's happening through this middleman. But how many numbers of middlemen are required in a chain of farming to fork environment? That depends. So the biggest barrier right now, no one knows who are the middlemen. When I'm farming something in my farm and I'm putting out of my farm gate, what happens to the product? Farmers don't have a single clue. So there are plenty of middlemen working around it, and when it's reached to the end consumer, the price point at all these people's payment and commission. That's where farmers not getting. So people saying the product was very expensive. So that leaks going 160 rupees per kilogram. But if you ask the farmer, I'm giving it for 20 rupees or 30 rupees. That's what the real scenario is all about. So if a platform, like, there are some experiments happening, there are some people, some good entrepreneurs who are working on that environment, marketplaces where farmers can directly buy and sell their goods, and there are payment mechanisms directly happening in between, and there must be a quality check. If you are paying online, so we can buy a mobile phone but we can't buy a vegetable but without seeing it or without checking it. So that's how we grow, right? So in that sense, we need a quality check mechanism. These are some of the requirements which need to be implemented. You don't believe the first farm to payment, peer-to-peer payment mechanism happened not in US, not in Netherlands, not in Israel. It's happened in Africa. So the M-Pesa, the first mobile-based payment mechanism where farmers get paid through a mobile platform, because the reason is coming from the ground. It was the interesting story it's all about. That's where you can localize your product. What happens on M-Pesa? So you probably saw Africa in the movies. It's kind of similar to that environment in many cases. So if you have more money in your bag and you can't walk in the street, so there are robbers, there are people who just kill people and take the money. So making money digitalized, it's kind of a mandatory thing to be happen to get the farmers exact payment to get paid. That was a basic requirement. That's where M-Pesa started close to 12 years, 14 years ago. So that mechanism was a huge success. Farmers get paid and they had their own money. That's what exactly happened. There's no robbery happen in the middle. No one is going to hit you and take your money in the street. That's the demand. It's create M-Pesa. In Sri Lanka, after 14 years, some technology happens and successful in Africa. Still, we don't have a proper mechanism for it. That's where you need to think around what's exactly Sri Lanka looking for. Where are the loopholes? Where farmers are not getting benefit, and some middlemen get more benefit than the farmer who producing and put heart and soul into it. That's where you can think about where farmers will adapt just like that. So දැන් ඔයගලන් think කරන්න පුළුවන් ඔයගලන්ට කල්පනා කරන්න පුළුවන් domain එකක්. දැන් කොයි වගේ ටෙක්නොලොජි එකක්ද ඔයගලන් බලා ගන්න පුළුවන් කියන දේ ඇතුළත දැන් මම එක්සැම්පල් එකක් කියන්නම්. ටෙක්නොලොජිස් ගොඩක් කියන්න පුළුවන්. ඒත් ඇත්තට අපේ අපේ farming environment එකට තියෙන exact problems හොයා ගන්න ඕනේ. මේක හැමදේම කියන්න පුළුවන් problem එක හොයාගෙන ඒකට solution එකක් දෙන්න කියන එක. ඒකේ importance එක අපිට තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ. අපි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් අපේ entrepreneurs ඇටියට engineers ඇටියට technologists ඇටියට අපි කරන්නේ අපි product එකක් app එකක් මොනාරි අදාගෙන ඒකට on top අපි problems හොයනවා. මේ scenario එක farmers හරහා work කරන්නේ නැහැ. market එක ගොඩාක් වෙනස් අනිත් consumer product base එකට වඩා. farmers කියන්නේ අපි think කරන්න අවුරුදු 2000ක් මේක නම් grow වෙලා තියන්නේ farmers ලා grow වෙලා තියන්නේ මේ වගේ සිනාරියෝ එකට ඇඩැප්ටේෂන් කියන්නේ අපි අල්ලපු ෆාම් එකේ කොහොමද ප්‍රොඩක්ටිවිටි ඉම්ප්‍රූව් වෙන්නේ එයාගෙන් ආලා වර්ඩ් ඔෆ් මවුත් මෙයාත් ඒකට ඇඩැප්ට් වෙනවා ඒකයි මේ වගේ ඉන්ෆර්මේෂන් හරියට ස්ප්‍රෙඩ් වෙන්නේ නැති ඉඳ තමයි හැම අවුරුද්දම අපි වට්ටක්ක වැඩියෙන් ග්‍රෝ කරලා පාර දිගේ දාගෙන අලියෝ කන ප්‍රශ්නෙට වෙන්නේ ඕවර් ප්‍රොඩක්ෂන් ඔෆ් ෆන්කින් so අපි බලන්නේ මොකක්ද සක්සස්ෆුල් ඒක රිප්ලිකේට් කරනවා so ඒ වගේ මෙකැනිසම් එකක් තියෙන ඇතුළතදී ඔයගොල්ලන් Facebook එකේ මාකට් කරලා කරන්න බෑ for an example so මේ වගේ තැනක අපි ඇඩප්ට් කරන්න ඕනේ ඇත්තට අපේ ෆාමර්ස් ලාගේ එක්සැක්ට් රික්වයර්මන්ට් එක අන්ඩර්ස්ටෑන්ඩ් කරන එක හරහා විතරයි අපිට මේක කරගන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ. දැන් ෆාමර් කෙනෙක් දැන් උදාහරණයක් දැන් ළඟදී පේපර් වල ආපු උදාහරණයක් තමයි. නුවරඑළියේ ෆාමර් කෙනෙක් රුපියල් 20ට රුපියල් 30කට කිලෝ ලීක්ස් දෙනවා නම් දැන් ඔයගොල්ලන් මැනින් මාකට් එකේ නැත්තම් රීටේල් චේන් එකකින් ගන්න ලීක්ස් කිලෝග්‍රෑම් එකක් රුපියල් 160ක් වෙනවා. මේක මිනිස්ටර් කෙනෙක් කිව්වේ. දැන් මේ වගේ ලොකු ගැප් එකක් කියන එකේ කාටද බෙනිෆිට් එක යන්නේ කන්සියුමර්ස් පේ කරන එතනට එන පේමන්ට් එක ඒ ෆාමර්ස්ලාට ලැබෙන්නේ පොඩි ගාණක් නම් මෙතන මිඩල්මෑන් ලොකු චේන් එකක් තියෙන එක තමයි මේ කමිෂන්ස් ඒගොල්ලන්ට යන්නේ දැන් මේක පියර් ටු පියර් ෆාමර් ටු බයර් එනේබල් කරන්න පුළුවන් නම් මිඩල්මෑන් පොඩ්ඩක් අඩු කරන්න පුළුවන් නම් ඒකෙන් ගොඩක් වාසියක් ලැබෙනවා ෆාමර්ස්ලාටයි ෆාමර්ස් ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ ටෙක්නොලොජි ඇඩැප්ට් කරන එකටයි නැත්නම් කන්සියුමර්ස් ඇඩැප්ට් කරන එකයි ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ ප්‍රොඩක්ට් එකට පේමන්ට් එකක් ලැබෙන්න හොඳ සර්විස්මක් කරගන්න පුළුවන්. මේකට හොඳ උදාහරණ ස්ටෝරියක් තියෙනවා. ලංකාවේ තාම peer to peer payment mechanism එකක් නැහැ farmers-ලාට. farmers farm gate එකකින් ඒගොල්ලන්ට pay කරලා ගන්න පුළුවන් mechanism එකක් නැහැ. ඒම ගත්තත් ලංකාවේ ඉතින් තියෙන ලොකුම ප්‍රශ්න. අපේ subsidies නැත්නම් crop insurance වලට සල්ලි වලින් ගෙවන්න ගියොත් farmers-ලා ඒක alcohol එකට use කරන percentage එක හරිම වැඩියි. ඒක exactly farm field එකට දාන එක ගොඩාක් අඩුයි ඒක historically proof වෙච්ච දෙයක්. අපේ demand එකක් තියෙනවා farmers ලාට මේක agriculture perspective එකට use කරන්න කියලා. මේ වගේ උදාහරණයක් තමයි M-Pesa කියන platform එකක් ලෝකේ තියෙන පළවෙනි farmers peer to peer payment mechanism එක. මේක implement උනේ ඇමරිකාවෙන් නෙමෙයි ඇෆ්‍රිකාවෙන්. මේ exact requirement එක ආවේ farmers ලා දැන් ඇෆ්‍රිකාව ගලන් දැක්කොත් එතන farmers ලා සල්ලි අරගෙන පාරේ යන්න බෑ. කවුරුහරි කාලේ සල්ලි උදර ගන්නවා ඒක නැති කරන්න කොහොම හරි මේ farmers ලාගේ peer to peer payment mechanism එක enable කරන්න ඕනි කියන demand එක අනුව implement වෙච්ච දෙයක් තමයි M-Pesa and it global hit එකක් වුණා farmers ලාට mobile එකේ SMS එකේ mobile account එකේ ඒගොල්ලන්ට payment mechanism එකක් කරගන්න පුළුවන් වුණා so ඒත් මේ වගේ important simple technology උනත් ලංකාවට තාම ඒක ගේන්න බැරි වුණා අවුරුදු 14 අපිට වැඩි වෙනවා So, මේ ගැප් එක අපි ෆිල් කරන්න ඕන. ලංකාවට IT crop insurance එකක් නැහැ. අවු ආවත් වැස්ස වැඩියෙන් ඇවිල්ලා ෆ්ලඩ් එකක් ආවත් අපිට farmers ලාට හරියට pay කරන්න පුළුවන් designed insurance mechanism එකක් නැහැ. ඒ වගේ දේවල් ගොඩක් important මෙතන. subsidy allocation කරන්න informations නැහැ. ලංකාවේ data තියෙන ඕන තරම්. ඒ data අනුව අපිට කියන්න බෑ කාගේ ලෑන්ඩ් එකද කවුද ෆාම් කරන්නේ මොකක්ද ක්‍රොප් එක කියන දේ අපිට එක ක්ලිකින් ගන්න බෑ. එතන එක කෝල් කරලා එක්ස්ටෙන්ෂන් ඔෆිසර් ගාවකින් එතන ඉන්ෆර්මේෂන් අරගෙන එනකොට ඒ ඉන්ෆර්මේෂන් ස්කැටර්ඩ් වෙනවා. මේ වගේ බේසික් ඩේටාබේස් එකකින් බේසික් පේමන්ට් මෙකැනිසම් එකකින් e-commerce platform එකකින් කරන්න පුළුවන් දේවල් ටෙක්නොලොජිස් ගොඩක් කරන්න තියෙනවා. ඇඩ්වාන්ස් දේවල් වලට වඩා මේක enable කරලා ඒකට යනකොට farmers at least adapt වෙලා තියෙනවා. direct farmers ලාට focus කරනවා. ஸோ உங்களோட ப்ரொடக்டை நீங்கள் யோசிக்கும் போது ரொம்ப அட்வான்ஸான ஒரு ஸ்டேட் ஆஃப் த ஆர்ட் டெக்னாலஜி வந்து யோசிக்க வேண்டிய அவசியம் இல்லை. டெக்னாலஜின்றது நாங்கள் ஒரு என்ஜினியராக நாங்கள் எப்படி யோசிப்போம்னா ஒரு டெக்னாலஜி ஒரு ஆப்பையோ பில்ட் பண்ணிட்டு அதுக்கு ஒன் டாப் முடிஞ்ச வர ஒரு ப்ராப்ளமும் கண்டுபிடிப்போம். இந்த ப்ராப்ளமுக்காக தான் நான் இது செஞ்சேன்ற மாதிரி இருக்கும். ஸோ அந்த ஆர்டரில் போனீங்கன்னா இதை எக்ஸாக்ட்லி ஒரு ஃபார்மரோட ஹேண்டில் கொண்டு போகிறது ரொம்பவே கஷ்டமான விஷயம். லாஜிக்கலியும் அது சரியாக வராது. ஸோ இப்போ உதாரணமாக சொல்ல போனால் எங்களோட ஃபார்மர்ஸுக்கான ஒழுங்கான ஒரு பேமெண்ட் மெக்கானிசமும் ஃபார்மர்ஸ் டிரெக்டாக பே பண்ணக்கூடிய ஒரு மெக்கானிசமும் இது வரைக்கும் இல்லை. ஃபார்மில் ப்ரொடியூஸ் பண்ணுற ஒரு பொருள் கன்சியூமரோட கையில் கிடைக்கும் போது நடுவில் ஒரு 50 மிடில்மேன் கையில் அது கை மாறி வந்ததால் கிட்டத்தட்ட அதோட பொருள் ஃபார்ம் கேட்டில் கொடுத்ததை விட கிட்டத்தட்ட 8 மடங்கு அதிகமான ப்ரைஸில் தான் மார்க்கெட்டுக்கு போய் சேருது. ஸோ இந்த மாதிரியான விஷயத்தால் உண்மையில பெனிஃபிட் நிறைய பேருக்கு போய் சேருது. ஓகே, பட் ஃபார்மர் அவன் போட்ட ஹார்ட் அண்ட் சோல் ஒரு வருஷம் அவன் ஹார்வெஸ்ட் பண்ண விஷயத்துக்கான ப்ரைஸிங் அவனுக்கு போய் சேர்றது இல்லை. ஸோ ஃபார்மர் உங்களோட டெக்னாலஜி அடாப்ட் பண்ணணுமெண்டா ஃபார்மரோட பெனிஃபிட்டை அதிகரிக்கலாம். ஸோ 20 ரூபாய்க்கு கொடுக்கப்படுற லீக்ஸ் இங்கே வர மார்க்கெட்டுக்கு வந்ததும் 160 ரூபா ஆகுதுண்டா அவன் 50 ரூபாய்க்கு அந்த லீக்ஸுக்கான பேமெண்ட் எடுத்து 80 ரூபாய்க்கு மார்க்கெட்டில் போட முடியுமெண்டா எல்லாரும் பெனிஃபிட் அடையலாம். நடுவில் இருக்க மிட்மேன் நம்பரை குறைக்கணும் அண்ட் பியர் டு பியர் பேமெண்ட் கேட்வே எனேபிள் பண்ணணும். இந்த மாதிரியான சின்ன விஷயங்களே நிறைய ஃபார்மிங் கம்யூனிட்டியில் தேவைப்படுது. ஃபார்மர்ஸும் இதை அடாப்ட் பண்ணுவாங்க, ஏன்னா அவனுக்கு டிரெக்டான ஒரு பெனிஃபிட் இருக்கிறதால. ப்ராப்ளம் ஐடென்டிஃபை பண்ணி அதுக்கான சொல்யூஷன் கொண்டு வரதுக்கு ஒரு நல்ல உதாரணமாக தான் எம்பஸான்னு சொல்கிற ஒரு பிளாட்ஃபார்ம். இது உலகத்தோட முதல் ஃபார்மிங் பியர் டு பியர் ஒரு பேமெண்ட் மெக்கானிசம். ஃபார்ம் கேட்லேருந்து உங்களுக்கு பேமெண்ட் பண்ணலாம். இது உருவானதுக்கான காரணம் ஆப்பிரிக்காவுக்குள்ள இப்போ நீங்கள் கையில் நிறைய ஃபார்ம் ப்ரொடக்ஷன் கொடுத்து கையில் காசு எடுத்து ரோட் வழி நடந்து போகிறீங்கன்னா அடித்து பறிச்சுட்டு எடுத்துகிட்டு போயிடுவாங்க. ஸோ இந்த ஒரு ரிக்யர்மெண்ட்டை நிறைய பேர் தெரிஞ்சுட்டதால டெக்னாலஜிஸ் மொபைல் டெக்னாலஜி கம்பெனிஸ் என்ன செஞ்சதுன்னா எம்பஸான்ற ஒரு பிளாட்ஃபார்மை பில்ட் பண்ணாங்க. பேமெண்ட்டு நீங்கள் மொபைல் பேமெண்ட் த்ரூ எடுத்துக்கலாம். நீங்கள் ஒரு மொபைலில் தேவைப்படுற நேரம் ஏடிஎம் மாதிரி நீங்கள் மொபைல் பேமெண்ட்டை யூஸ் பண்ணிக்கலாம், பே பண்ணிக்கலாம். இந்த மாதிரியான சிம்பிளான ஒரு டெக்னாலஜி ஈஸியாக எனேபிள் பண்ணிட்டான். 14 வருஷம் இன்னும் நாங்கள் ஸ்ரீலங்காவில் அந்த மாதிரியான டெக்னாலஜி எனேபிள் பண்ணுறோம். இன்னும் ஃபார்ம் கேட்டில் ஒரு பேமெண்ட், தென் ஒரு மிடில் மேன், அதுக்கு பிறகு ஒரு மிடில் மேன், அதுக்கு பிறகு ஒரு மிடில் மேன், ஒரு 50 மிடில் மேன் கை மாறி கடைசியில் கன்சியூமர் என்ட்ரிக்கு வரும்போது அது 6 மடங்கு 8 மடங்கு ப்ரைஸிங் அதிகமாக சேரும். ஸோ நீங்கள் யார் ஆடியன்ஸாக எடுக்க போகிறீங்க, மிடில் மேனுண்டா மிடில் மேனுக்கு ஒரு பெனிஃபிட்டாக இருக்கக்கூடிய மாதிரி இருக்கும். ஃபார்மர் தான் ஃபோக்கஸ் பண்ணுறீங்கன்னா ஃபார்மரோட பெனிஃபிட் தான் நீங்கள் மெயினாக பார்க்க வேண்டியதாக இருக்கும். நம்பர் ஆஃப் ஃபார்மர் அடாப்டேஷன் உங்களுக்கு தேவை வேண்டாம். ரைட். So second thing, the climate impact, that's very important at this stage. So where we playing around, so climate impact, where it's kept our brand value high. So there are thousands of product lines coming and going. So if you want to keep your brand value high, then you need to have a word of spread. It happens in a good way. So climate impact and climate related informations are very important when you are talking about. So you can have a conversion in terms of financial aspect. Farmers get this much of benefit financially. At the same time, your product do something on climate impact, you get attention from global point of view. Because most of the agriculture technology companies around the world, it's not a written rule, but they get at least one grant from a climate perspective in an impact oriented perspective. So that grant gives them a kickoff. So we received plenty of grants from Helsinki, from Edinburgh, recently from India. So these grants and these awards make us grow whenever it's take a slow procedure of improvement in the business point of view. So if you can work with impact-oriented benefits, definitely that's going to create your kickoff in terms of your brand and give you kind of financial aid also to get your market access in the early adoption. Early adoption is the ultimate key whenever you are starting a product. That's why I talk about the global perspective, but think about a niche market. If you are focusing on paddy, and I'm just going to implement this. Early adapters would be one set of farming organization which own 100 farmers, and that's the best option. But you're supposed to keep it in mind whether that model can be replicated into multiple clusters, and you can scale up based on it. So scalability, starting from early adapters, that is a proportional correlated equation. So that's, you have to keep it in mind. So ඔගලම් ප්‍රයිසිං මොඩලයක් නැත්තම් බිස්නස් මොඩලයක් කරනවා නම් ඇග්‍රිකල්චර් ඉකෝසිස්ටම් එකට ඕන බිස්නස් එකට මේක ගැලපෙනවා. ඒත් ෆාමිං ඉකෝසිස්ටම් එකට ඒක ගොඩක් ගැලපෙනවා. දැන් අපිට දැන් ප්‍රොඩක්ට් එකක් කරනවා නම් ඒක හැම ෆාම කෙනෙක්ම යූස් කරන්න පුළුවන්. එක්සැම්පල් පේමන්ට් ගේට්වේ එකක් නැත්නම් එක්සැම්පල් මාකට් ප්ලේස් එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. මේ වගේ දෙයක් ඔයගොල්ලන් රිප්ලිකේට් මේ වගේ ප්‍රොඩක්ට් එකක් බිල්ඩ් කරනවා නම් ඒක කොමන් ප්ලැට්ෆෝම් එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒත් early adapters කියන දේවා ඔයගොල්ලන් දැන් කල්පනා කරනවා නම් කවුද මේ ප්ලැට්ෆෝම් එකට ඉස්සෙල්ලාම ඔන්බෝඩ් වෙන්නේ. ලංකාවේ වුණා දැන් T auction එක තමයි පළවෙනි auction platform එක agriculture base එකේ උනේ. කියන්නේ දැන් අපේ ලොකු audience pool එකක් තියෙනවා, අපිට concentrated market එකක් තියෙනවා, මේගොල්ලන් තමයි මේ platform එකට එන්නේ කියන එක. ඒ අනුව අපිට design කරන්න පුළුවන්. දැන් මේ T auction එක දැන් ඊළඟ rubber නැත්නම් coffee auction එකට මාරු කරනවා නම් පොඩි tweaking එකක් තමයි කරන්න තියන්නේ technically. So technology dependencies කවදාවත් prioritize කරන්න එපා. ecosystem එකේ design එක exactly design කරන්න පුළුවන් නම් ඒක තමයි ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ technology architecture එක වෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒක තමයි ultimate story. දැන් මේකේ ලොකු correlation එකක් බලන්න ඕනේ. දැන් පළවෙනි adaptation එක තමයි agriculture business එකේ තියෙන ලොකුම gap එක. ගොඩක් දෙනෙක් පුළුවන් තරම් ඒක flood marketing කරන්න හදනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ Facebook එකේ මාක් කරලා ලංකාවේ ඉන්න හැම farmerටම යවන්න පුළුවන්ද කියලා බලනවා. ඒක වැඩ කරන්න අනිවාර්යයෙන්. අපි try කරා. අපි PR promotions ගොඩක් කරා. ඒක වැඩ කරේ නැහැ. PR දැන් අපිට යන්නේ brand value එකට විතරයි. client base එකට අපි දැන් කරන්නේ ecosystem. දැන් ඒක experience එක මම කියන්නේ ecosystem එකක් ඔයගොල්ලන් adapt කරන්න පුළුවන් නම් early adapters ඇටියට ඒක replicate කරන්න පුළුවන් නම් ඒ වගේම ecosystem 1000ක් තියෙනවා නම් ලංකාව පුරා ඒක තමයි ඔයගේ business model එකක් වෙන්නේ. දැන් මහා කන්නෙන් දැන් යල irrigation යනකොට එක reservoir එකක් බේස් කරපු 100 farmers ඒ වගේ තියෙනවා නම් ඒගොල්ලන්ට දෙන ටෙක්නොලොජි එක ඔයගොල්ලන්ට සිම්පලි replicate කරන්න පුළුවන් reservoirs 3000කට එකම province එකේ අනුරාධපුරේ. ඒ වගේ design කරන්න ඕනේ ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ business architecture එකක්. එක design එක cluster එකක් ඒකට adapt වුණා නම් ඒක සිම්පලි replicate කරන්නේ කොහොමද කියන එක විතරයි ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ ඊළඟ task එක වෙන්නේ. පළවෙනියෙන්ම ඔයගොල්ලන් කරන්න ඕනේ මේක කොහොමද adapt කරන්නේ. early adapters කියන audience කවුද කියන එක identify කරන්න ඕනේ ඔයගොල්ලන් product එක build කරන්න කලින්. product එකේ sketch එක අදින්න කලින් early adapters කවුද කියන එක දැනගන්න ඕනේ. මම කාටද හදන්නේ? salmon farmers ලාටද? tea small holders ලාට. tea small holders උනත් ඒකේ පාත රට උඩ රට දෙකටම බලන්න ඕනේ අනිවාර්යයෙන්. රත්නපුර දිනියාය පැත්තේ තියෙන ප්‍රශ්න වෙනයි, නූරෙලියේ තියෙන ප්‍රශ්න වෙනයි. කවුද මේක adapt කරන්න යන්නේ? නැත්තම් පැඩි ෆාමර්ස් ලාද, sugar cane farmers ලාද? හැමදේම කල්පනා කරලා ඒ කවුද මම රීච් කරන්න යන්නේ මේ එක්ස්පෙරිමන්ට් එකට ඇඩප්ටේෂන් එකට කියන තීරණය අරගෙන ඊළඟ පියවර තමයි ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ ටෙක්නොලොජි ඩිසයින් කොහොමද මේක රිප්ලිකේට් කරන්න කියන එක හොයාගන්න ඕනේ. ஸோ இப்போ உங்களோட ப்ரொடக்ட் ஒன்று உங்களோட ஐடியா இருந்ததுண்டா அதுக்கான ப்ரையாரிட்டி இல்லை. ஒரு ஹயரார்கிக்கல் ஃபார்மேட்டில் போனீங்கன்னா முதலாவது ஆப்ஷனே நாங்கள் யாருக்கு என்ன சொல்யூஷன் கொண்டு வர போகிறோம். நீங்கள் ஒரு ப்ராப்ளம் ஐடென்டிஃபை பண்ணுறீங்க. உதாரணமாக தண்ணி பிரச்சனை வைங்களேன், நீர் இல்லைன்னா லேண்ட் இல்லைன்னா கிளைமேட்டிக் இஷ்யூஸ் ஏதோ ஒரு பிரச்சனையை ஐடென்டிஃபை பண்ணிட்டீங்கன்னா ரெண்டாவது ஸ்டெப் டெக்னாலஜி டெவலப்மெண்ட் இல்லை. எது உங்களோட ஏர்லி அடாப்டர்ஸ். முதலாவதாக என்னோட ப்ரொடக்டை யூஸ் பண்ண போகிற இண்டிவிஜுவல் யார், எங்களால் அந்த ஒரு இண்டிவிஜுவலுக்கு ஐடென்டிஃபை பண்ண புரிஞ்ச மாட்டேன். அதுக்கு பெர்சோனான்னு சொல்கிறது. அவர் எத்தனை மணிக்கு எந்திரிப்பார், அவரோட டெய்லி ருட்டீன் அந்த மாதிரி பெர்சோனான்னு சொல்கிறது. அந்த பெர்சோனா எங்களால் ரெப்ளிகேட் பண்ண முடியுமா? ஏன்னா ஒரு ஈகோ சிஸ்டம் ரத்னபுரையில் இருக்கிற ஒரு சின்ன ஒரு தெனியாயில் இருக்கிற ஸ்மால் ஹோல்டர் டீ ஃபார்மர்ஸ் அப்படின்ற ஒரு ஈகோ சிஸ்டமாக இருக்கலாம். இல்லைன்னா யாழ்ப்பாணத்தில் இருக்க பூனாரி மட்டக்கருப்பன் ரைஸ் போடுற ஃபார்மர்ஸ் மட்டும் கம்யூனிட்டி அப்படின்ற மாதிரி ஒரு ஈகோ சிஸ்டம், சின்ன ஒரு ஈகோ சிஸ்டம். யார் உங்களோட முதலாவது ஏர்லி அடாப்டர்ஸ்? அந்த ஈகோ சிஸ்டத்துக்கு ஏற்ற மாதிரி தான் உங்களோட டெக்னாலஜி ஆர்கிடெக்சர் வரணும். அந்த ஈகோ சிஸ்டம் செலெக்ஷன் எப்படி இருக்கணும்னா ரிப்ளிகேட்டபிளாக இருக்கணும். அதுக்கு பேர் ஸ்கேலிங் ஆகும். ஸோ இந்த முதலாவது உங்களோட ஈகோ சிஸ்டமும் நீங்கள் சூஸ் பண்ணுற ஏர்லி அடாப்டர்ஸும் உங்களோட ஸ்கேலிங் ப்ராசஸுக்காக நீங்கள் யூஸ் பண்ணுற மெக்கானிசமும் கோரிலேட்டட். ஒரு கிளஸ்டர், அதுக்கு ஒரு மைக்ரோ கிளஸ்டர் நாங்கள் டெக்னிக்கலி சொல்லுவோம். ஒரு மைக்ரோ கிளஸ்டர் அது வந்து ஒரே மாதிரியான பிஹேவியர் உள்ள ஒரு சின்ன ஈகோ சிஸ்டமாக இருக்கும். அதை ரெப்ளிகேட் பண்ணிட்டு போகக்கூடியதாக இருந்தால் உங்களோட பிஸ்னஸ் ஸ்கேல் ஆகும். இது எந்த க்ராப்பாக இருக்கலாம், அதுக்கு பேர் தான் நிச் மார்க்கெட்னு சொல்கிறது. ஒரு குறிப்பிட்ட சின்ன ஒரு ஆடியன்ஸ், நீங்கள் அந்த மார்க்கெட் எடுக்கிறீங்க, அதை ரெப்ளிகேட் பண்ணுறீங்க. இதுக்கு உதாரணமாக சொல்ல வேண்டாம், கமாயா கமாயான்னு சொல்கிற ஒரு ட்ரோன் டெக்னாலஜி கம்பெனி. ரீசெண்டாக இந்தியன் மஹேந்திரா டிராக்டர்ஸ் கேள்விப்பட்டிருப்பீங்க. மஹேந்திரா டிராக்டர்ஸ் கம்பெனி மூலமாக இன்வெஸ்ட் பண்ணப்பட்ட ஒரு கம்பெனி, $13.5 million. ஸோ இந்த கம்பெனி என்ன செய்யுதுன்னா, அவங்களோட கம்ப்ளீட் டெக்னாலஜி பில்ட் பண்ணுறது சுகர் கேனுக்கு மட்டும், கரும்பு ஃபார்முக்கு மட்டும்தான் அவனோட டெக்னாலஜி. ட்ரோன் சொல்ல நீங்கள் உலகத்தில் இருக்க எந்த க்ராப்புக்கும் யூஸ் பண்ணலாம், வானத்தால் பறக்குது, அது எந்த க்ராப்புக்கும் யூஸ் பண்ணலாம்ன்றதை விட அவன் ஒரு குறிப்பிட்ட நிச் மார்க்கெட் சுகர் கேன் மட்டும். இந்தியாவில் இத்தனை 1000 ஹெக்டார், இத்தனை மில்லியன் ஹெக்டார் சுகர் கேன் இருக்கு, நான் இந்தியாவில் இன்வெஸ்ட்மெண்ட் எடுக்கிறேன். உங்களோட கம்ப்ளீட் பிஸ்னஸ் மாடலையும் உங்களோட ஏர்லி அடாப்டர் முடிவு பண்ணுவார். ஸோ දැන් ඔයගොල්ලන් චූස් කරන early adapter කොච්චර බලපානවද කියනකොට ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ complete business model එකට දැන් ඉන්දියාවේ තියෙන දැන් ගමායා කියලා කම්පැනියක්, ඉන්දියන් කම්පැනියක් නෙවෙයි, ජර්මන් කම්පැනියක්. ඒගොල්ලන් ඉන්වෙස්ට්මන්ට් එක ගත්තේ ඉන්දියන් ටෙක් මහේන්ද්‍රා කියන ඕගනයිසේෂන් එක. මහේන්ද්‍රා ට්‍රැක්ටර්ස් හාලා ඇති. මේ කම්පැනියෙන් කරන්නේ ඩ්‍රෝන් ටෙක්නොලොජියක්. දැන් ඩ්‍රෝන් ටෙක්නොලොජි කියනකොට ඔයගොල්ලන් හිතන්න පුළුවන් හැම ක්‍රොප් එකකටම යූස් කරන්න පුළුවන්. ටී උඩ යවන්න පුළුවන්, රබර්, ඔයිල් ප්ලාන්ටේෂන් හැම එකටම යවන්න පුළුවන්. ඒගොල්ලන් යූස් කරන්නේ ටෙක්නොලොජිස් අදාන්නේ sugar cane farming එකට විතරයි. මේක තමයි කියන්නේ niche market කියලා. දැන් sugar cane plantations වලට ටෙක්නොලොජි හදනකොට ඉන්දියාවෙන් අගලන් ඉන්වෙස්ට්මන්ට් ගන්නේ ඒ ඉඳලා. ඉන්දියාවේ මෙච්චර ලොකු sugar plantations තියෙනවා. ඒ ඉඳලා මට බිස්නස් මොඩල් එකක් හදා ගන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ වගේ ඔයගොල්ලන් complete business එකම ඩිසයිඩ් කරන්නේ අර early adapters. So පළවෙනිම ඔයගොල්ලන් identify කරන්නේ problem එක. ඊළඟ early adapters කවුද? ඒගොල්ලන් completely define කරනවා. අර early adapters ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ replicated මේක ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ marketing channel එක, sales channel එක හැමදේම decide කරන්නේ early adapters. කොහොමද මේක scaling up කරන්නේ? ඊට පස්සේ තමයි අන්තිමට තමයි ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ technology architecture එක එන්නේ. Technology අපේ point එක ඒ තමයි අපි හිතන් ඉන්නේ පළවෙනි දවසේ ඉඳලා. ඒක unwritten rule එක. 5% importance විතරයි agriculture field එකකින් දෙන්න ඕනේ. Completely එක ecosystem එක තමයි ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ technology තියෙන payment technology value එක decide කරන්නේ.
Excuse
So,
me, sir.
yes.
Sir, you may continue in English, sir. So if any problems come across, we can do that in the Q&A session, sir, if they have any problems with relevance to the language, sir.
Sure. I thought it would be clear someone asking for it. So,
Thank you, sir.
sure. And third thing, if you're working on a product, and let's imagine you already get your early adapters, and you find out how to scaling up this. You figure out a way how to crack open this entire value chain. So if everything happens well, then it's all about getting scaling up with investments and market openings. How that happens? So what we decide. So I'm explaining from my personal experience on here. So day one, we had, as Famida rightly said, we start our company in 2014, and we getting forward, and we failed, we bankrupted in 2016. If you read articles about Sensmay and Sensagro, then we started again in 2018 with a different investor. So how it happened was, so when you starting something, you fail and you understand how it's going forward. Sri Lankan context, we decide one thing. So we already running a company for almost 5 years right now, 3-4 years right now, before starting Sensagro. And it was a very a smooth ride. We tried to be much as possible, more convenient and more not big hopes and big plans to execute, no much risk. But when we start in Sensagro, we decide one thing. Tech agriculture industry, it's a replicatable company model, replicatable business, because everyone eating food, the basic general thought. Second thing, it's very common throughout the region where it's reachable in very close area. So if we building, imagine a software platform for Zoom. Imagine if I'm building Zoom in my point of view. First thing would be I'm developing something in Sri Lanka, but next step I'm expecting, okay, Zoom need to be in a larger audience who can pay. Then I'm going to US, then I'm going to China or India, and I'm focusing on those areas because that's where the money comes in. That's where we can replicate it. But if you take agriculture, you're building something in Sri Lanka, you automatically getting into an audience pool which is the highest population on all the closest neighbor countries. So India, almost 50% depend on agriculture. Pakistan, the same. Bangladesh, the exact same. Southeast Asia, starting from Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, all these countries are completely dependent on agriculture. So when we starting agriculture-based technology business, we decide it going to be replicated throughout the region at least, and making kind of a hub and become at least a small percentage of the global market. It's a huge company. So we took many risks on this aspect. We already tried to expand throughout the region, and we already deploy a couple of deployments in Middle East, Japan, and now opening up in India as well. So that's the important part. So when you're scaling up, you need investment, you need market opening, you need market partnership. How are you going to deploy? So there are two different things. So if you're working on a platform, a software platform, you input, for example, let's say an ERP system for farmers. So that need a different set of business development process. But if you started to working on something similar, what we are working like in hardware oriented or a hydroponic expansion, then you need distribution partners on each and every single environment you are working on, because it's depend on inventory. You're supposed to think about how the deployment works, installation works, and how you are retrieving if something goes wrong, or troubleshooting, or how the maintenance part works, the warranty works, and so on. So two different things. It's more complicated when it comes to hardware, but it makes more sense when farmers' behavior, it's easy to convince by a physical object. That's we are limited. Observing a small, so imagine why farmers are not adopting ERP, which is almost 20, 30 years old, and almost every single corporate, even a pharmacy or a multi-trade small shop have an ERP system, right? A resource planning system. Why the major sector of Sri Lanka it's not utilizing an ERP in agriculture? It's a mandate. There's no no saying say it like farmers cannot use an ERP. They're supposed to use it because they are using resources and so on. But the adaptation was not there. One of the main reason we figure out, farmers don't see the tangible value of it. So farmers see simply adapt to drip irrigation and polytrons because they see there is something on hardware. So that's where it's hardware is kind of convenient when reaching on the farmer's end, but it's more complicated when and the company's operational perspective. Decide what you want to build. Whether it's hardware oriented, you need to have a different perspective. If it's software oriented, it's a different perspective. Coming back into the investment part of it. So if you're expanding to global point of view, you can make a few things. We pivot our business model into B2B to C. That means business to customer. So B2B2C mechanism, we find out distribution middleman partner with similar sort of companies who have our own client base there. So where you can piggyback on top of them and distribute the technology with them. So it could be in software point of view or hardware point of view. Enabling that, it's an expense. So if you think a small investment, it won't happen. So you're supposed to have a bigger investment if you want to grow in global. But the opportunities are so big, as I explained already. 2014, 2018 to 19, Indian investment agritech was 87% improved. It was $250 million invested in 19 companies. So the investment opportunities are so big, but it's very competitive. When people, entrepreneurs already having track record, they see this as an opportunity. They try to build something out of AgTech and try to get the investments from the investors. So the second option is grants. So there are plenty of NGOs, agriculture-specific NGOs, even in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is one of the main area attracting more investment on agritech. Believe it or not, that's the truth. World's largest climate-smart irrigation project happening in Sri Lanka. The World Bank invested $140 million in Sri Lanka for irrigation, climate-smart irrigation technologies. So these type of attentions coming for one reason. That's one of the opportunity for you guys. Sad story. Sri Lanka is the second country in the world index for climate risk index. We are the fastest climate losing country in the world. We are in the second position, even though we are not polluting in some extent, but we are impacted because of our geographical condition. We are impacted by external countries, other countries' practices. So we automatically become a vulnerable country in terms of the climate index. So that's where the global investment comes in, especially in the grant form. If you can build something on the impact oriented, that's allow you to open up something in the grant aspect where you can focus and you can get more receivables. At the same time, you can work in real client base. So that's give you an opportunity to open up a market and replicate that model. Namely, I can mention some NGOs like Oxfam, IFAD, World Bank, Sri Lankan Agriculture Partnership Programs, and Agriculture Modernization Project, IWMI for irrigation, World Resource Institutes, World Bank. There are a lot of uh, global entities giving grants to implement something in Sri Lanka. So you can simply, without much risk, you can open up something, but make sure your product have an impact on the farmer's end and the climatic aspect also. So that's the basic brief. I like to take some of your questions so we can take it forward from that. Famida, over to you. You're on mute.
Sorry, sir. Thank you, Mr. Miller, for that very informative session about how we're supposed to design and choose our audience and also the climate impact. So, if our audience has any questions, you can direct them through the chat box. Any questions that you'd like Mr. Miller to address, if it's with relevance to agri-tech in Sri Lanka or any question in general. The time is yours now.
Mr. Miller, I have one question. With regard to the technology that uses in with regard to the technology that uses in the government sector, how far the government has gone onto agriculture and connected with the farmers using the technology?
I would say very poor. Honestly, it's very poor, but we have all the resources. So there are bureaucracies also. So for an example, imagine, so that all the aspect, all the requirements can be fulfilled already if we work together. So every single crop organization have its own database, own data source, and there's no proper neural system which is treating all the data and make use of the data. We have years of climatic information, weather index, and weather information. We never utilize that data and broadcast to the farmers and directly to make smart moves on time. We have enough data to crop specifically to make use of it. So imagine if you have, so for an example, government bodies have the daily, from central bank, you get daily pricing index for crop, whatever the product you are coming into the market. So that data is not much used to guide the farmer. This is the demand for a certain given time where you can choose your crop rotation wisely. So that's a simple scenario. If every March pumpkin goes for 200 rupees per kilogram, I'm just taking an example. If that's the most highest price point, let the farmer know by Jan, within 3 months, for last 5 years, it shows a big number. You can plant pumpkins to reach out that number. So it's a small information you can spread through SMS, even that is not enabled. So it's very much a reluctant to in between organizations to correlate and going forward. But I think now it's happening. There are plenty of information system happening, and some good people getting into the boards, and they now currently started to working on this kind of a central neural systems and so on. And there's an organization from the government body called NAICC. They are working very hard, and they work with multiple applications, but still no one find out to reach out the entire audience pool, at least for crop specific or geography specifically. to reach out the farmers in a broadcast manner. If 2 rupees increased in the bus ticket value, within midnight, the entire bus owners, entire drivers, the entire country get to know bus ticket price improved by 2 rupees. But if the price point increase for a fertilizer or increase for a product, and there is a demand comes in a vegetable, no one knows how this information spread, how to spread this information to the farmers end, how to spread this information to the consumer end. So there's no possible logical reason why a bus community can implement this kind of a broadcasting mechanism, and the largest audience pool in Sri Lanka cannot implement this kind of a technology mechanism. So that's question again. But other end, it's not that easy also. If you give a glimpse, last year, a company called Impossible Foods from China, they received close to $500 million investment to support the entire China because it's China. So Sri Lanka is so big, you can't just implement anything right away. It's so much bureaucracy and so much struggles in the way of building it. But at the same time, Sri Lanka is not small as an individual company to make a small, quick change also. So it's like a complicated mechanism. So if it's in India, a single company getting a $3 million investment to get the market enabled. So Big Basket here received 300 million going on that budget. We can't do it for Sri Lanka. So that's one of the biggest issues. So second thing is more critical, but we can't disclose much on that aspect. It's pretty much a mafia, being honest, in the agriculture sector, because that's the largest population. If you control the population, you control the government, you control the entire country. So it's more complicated in that aspect as well. So middlemen play a big role. They are so powerful. So it's kind of a mandate to reduce power in a democratic country for individual middleman company. So it's getting more sarcastic in a way. So yeah, there are plenty of struggles to implement, but it's not implemented yet. Very poor in terms of adapting technologies to the rural end, even for information spreading.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
There are some initiatives happen like agriculture modernization and so on. Yeah.
If our audience has questions in any language, you can direct it towards Mr. Miller or through the chat box. You can use any of the languages.
Mr. Miller, how do you think solar energy? I'm sorry for the background noise with the rain, but how solar energy is useful in agricultural practices? Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's Nirma, that's pretty much an important question. So agro energy is one of the main core industry which is taking attention at these days. So there are plenty of investments also getting into this environment. So active, no one thinking that aspect. It's very important. There are few concepts. Let's take in a very general domain as energy. So solar is one of those things because irrigation or fertigation and everything, energy is one of the important part. So taking energy from a household level to the farming environment, if all the people are staying in urban areas and the farming environment was remote, having a standalone mobile remote energy mechanism is ultimately important. So especially for irrigation purposes, especially for fertigation purposes and so on. So not only solar energy, so apart from it, even other energy factors, especially the bio energy formation. So people utilizing agriculture purposes and agriculture wastage for for biofertilizer, for bioenergy production, hydraulic energy, any perspective. If you can build something on that, there are plenty of investment comes in. Especially there are new government initiatives also taking place on creating ecosystem based energy given. So if you are interested, there are NGOs like Janata Action. They're working on energy-based farming, agro-energy industry. So that's the word for it. It's a terminology for agro-energy. That's a completely different segment. It's ultimate. How you designing products, how you providing energy for existing channels like irrigation mechanism, or how you building a technology which is supporting standalone without a dependency on the household external energy source. So that's ultimately important. Second thing, the grid. So the large scale solar plantations also now allowing intercropping. So every single solar plantation, there's a huge gap in between the ground and the top. So people going pulses, maize, and type of things on top of the grid area. So there are plenty of initiatives happening right now as well. So it's a very important segment. Please go ahead on that aspect as well.
Mr.
Moving
Miller,
ahead.
yeah,
Yes.
I have another question. Actually, as far as we move into technology and as faster as we move into technology, there is another darker side of it. I don't know how to address this because the more we move into technology, the more we lose jobs also, the more we lose the works. So when it comes to agriculture, it's going to be impacted heavily. So how do we address this one? Actually, the farmer don't know that much technology to use and then get evolved.
Yes.
But so this is a huge problem when it comes to technology overtaking agriculture.
Uh, Actually, that's a little twist on that. So, a few factors I want to give you. So, first of all, technology is not replacing human; it's upgrading a professional. So, for an example, in BBC's news, BBC statement, in 2030, almost 85% of your current job status will be no longer available in 2030. It will be completely upgraded into a separate segment. Second thing, in Sri Lankan context, the second generation farmers, including myself, my father is a farmer. I'm into engineering and technology aspect. So, second 63% of the second generation farmers are not taking agriculture as an option for their career opportunity. So our farmers' average age is over 58. So this is the biggest barrier. So what happens in another 10 years? So to attract more young generation towards farming, technology is ultimately important. So that's one of the key elements what we try to achieve. At the same time, we can't say farmer anymore. So there are greenhouse producers, greenhouse hydroponic engineers, agro engineers. There is no concept called agro engineers 5 years back. Now there is a mechanism for it. So this is not actually replacing human. It's actually upgrading human job roles into a different aspect. So technology cannot replicate humans at all. In US, what happened? Their population only 3% depend on agriculture. They have lack of human to support that environment. In Canada, it's a different story. They are very smart. You all think Canada just allowing more and more immigrant and how they are creating job opportunities. Most of this immigrant new adaptation happening in Canada goes towards agriculture practices. They have huge land spaces. They're creating agriculture mechanisms and allow these people to train farming and do farming, and they become food sustainable. So it's kind of a country-wise dependency. In our case, 30% of the population depend on agriculture. This numbers definitely decline if new generation farmers not adapting to agriculture perspective, because this 30 percentage are 58 years old average. So technology is one of the key factor where farmers going to adapt. So technology, you're thinking about just sitting behind a computer and doing farming, it's not never going to happen. It's going to be improve your productivity. So that's what the ultimate thing. Until it's replacing a human to run a tractor, that's called automation in that sense. Then it might be replacing a tractor driver. Planting something in the soil and harvesting something through a machine, it's never going to lose a human being. It's something, it's naturally happening. The way you productive producing these things, it's the exact same thing, just like you're adapting from a buffalo to a tractor. It's just a tool. Technology never could be a mainstream at all. It can support medicine, it can support your clothing, garments, it can support agriculture. It never will be a mainstream because we can't eat silicon. That's the basic idea. So it's just going to upgrade the way we farming, but it's never going to replace a human being from the farm. The human labor, yes, they will be upgraded to utilize these technologies, or else they will be replaced for sure. So that's kind of a mandate at this stage to making adapting technology in the literacy level. That's the way we want to fit into our region. Where localizing your technology, where a non-literate farmer could be adapting it. That's where, as technologies, we will be shining and we will be taking the market lead. So you have to build technologies that supposed to support the farming productivity and reduce resource wastages in conventional practices. And you need to train your next generation farmers to adapt technology. You need to train unliterate farmers to upgrade themselves to produce, go along with technology, or else they will left out. They will be vanished with this 20,000 rupees profit per month. There's no upgradation happens. So technology is always a tool. Don't worry about it. It's kind of important at this stage. That's kind of just a myth, but you have.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? Through the chat box, or you may direct your questions to Mr. Miller.
I got interesting guys from the chat, but they are not active right now. Why not? They're active in the chat.
If the audience has any question, please feel free to ask from Mr. Miller.
Okay, so that's a question from Vinod. So yeah, there are a few ways you can get land. So he asking how to get land. So there are mechanisms. So there's a 100-acre land mechanism happen this year also, and there are few other ways also. With a grant, you can design a proposal and get it out. So one is the agriculture modernization project. So we're supposed to write up every year. They open up a grant mechanism. Every single district, at least 200 people getting some benefit out of it. So they will give you funding. They will give you land. They will co-share your investment also. It will be a grant, and the 50% they will allow you to take a bank loan also. So with that, you can build your company. So that's called agriculture modernization project. So it was funded by World Bank. You need to write up for the agriculture department for that. So that's one way. Recently, they opened up another mechanism where 100,000 farming land functional. I think this timeline was done. You probably heard about the recent issues in Batiklo and all with these 300-acre issues. So that's how that land dedication happened. Third thing, there are programs like SAP, Smallholder Agriculture Partnership Program. They enable youngsters. They have a separate youth promotion project. If you are a youth and I think less than 40 years old, and you started working on agriculture, they enable some of the projects, and you can be part of it. So the opportunities are very high. And third thing, you can lease agriculture land space from big players like the big organization. They lend their farming land, or they lend their land space for a long-term leasing mechanism, so you can be part of it. So agriculture innovation centers and all build on that kind of a environment. So there are few ways you're supposed to write up to the agriculture department, especially for the agriculture modernization project. Then definitely you'll be considered. So there are plenty of opportunities you can get land. And land is not only the option, right? So there are multiple ways. Now there's an interesting business model working around. So agriculture is not only the farming factor, right? So one thing, the seaweed and asola, so those type of things happening in drastic ways. You can farm on top of ocean. They dedicate ocean and separate ocean into you, so you can plant on top of the ocean field, and you can create your own pond by inland fishing. So you allow the ocean water inside the land space and creating your own freshwater fishing or saltwater fishing. So there are multiple options you can think about. Right. Mm, no, it's pretty hard to completely move in chemical, because organic farming mechanism or organic industry is not promoting. It's all about how you brand it. So for last 50 years, chemical companies branded themselves, and almost 90 percentage, more than 95 percentage, they penetrate into the agriculture business model. So it's very hard to break that market and come up with. So it's definitely a self-discipline how we turn into organic. So uh, improving, it's like influencer marketing. You need to show organic mechanisms and native breed of seeds producing better than the hybrid varieties or the chemical used mechanisms. Then only you can prove. It's just marketing. That's what people believe. That's how people adapt to something. Um, uh, it's not like a mental thing you just buy, because most of them try to buy something from the farming environment or market or from the retail chain. So they pretty much worry about my next meal. It comes 2 rupees cheaper. With the small scale production, it's very hard to get organic in very large scale price without price margin. Compared to inorganic, definitely organic is little expensive, because the scale how it happened was small. Third thing, so it's a self-disciplinary. So in Netherlands, they decided in 2014, I believe. By 2020, they tried to reach almost 10 percentage of it to 20 percentage of the complete production into complete organic, and they achieved by extra 2 percentage. So that's a self-disciplinary, because the country was developed and they don't have much issues by spending 2 rupees per kilogram of product which is organic compared to inorganic. The adaptation decide, the market decide, I need organic, not inorganic. So if Sri Lanka want to adapt organic, then the market's supposed to say I need organic. If you give it on this price, I will buy it. So then if that guarantee enabled, then farmers started to go organic, and they will bring the geotag, they will bring the gap certification, they will bring the organic mechanism, and they will learn the organic practices. Farmers, just like you guys, like computer engineers, you build technologies based on the client's requirement. So I think farmers also do the exact same thing. Client, that means the consumer, define what I'm going to buy. Until consumers say I'm not ready to pay 2 rupees extra for organic, farmers not going to take that risk also. So it's like a chicken and egg problem. If consumers are not accepting, and most number of farmers are reluctant to do organic farming, the organic farmers numbers will be very, very small. And so the price point cannot be matched in organic. When the slab price was small, then they are supposed to go for a small scale production, and that expense will be increased. Third thing, if your surrounding neighbors doing inorganic, that's impossible for you to build an organic farm in between. Automatically the drain, automatically the water you are using from the neighborhood, that's completely contaminated. So it's pretty hard at the moment to change someone individual farmer could change into organic completely. So it's supposed to be an ecosystem need to be changed from the consumer end, from the farmers end, the entire ecosystem for 200 acres or 500 acres. Now on, we are going completely organic, then it's possible. Unless it's pretty hard. So it's always a chicken and egg problem. So time says how it works.
Okay, thank you, sir, for answering all of those questions. That marks the end of a successful session conducted by Mr. Miller Rajendran. Sir, I'd like to thank you for taking time off your busy schedule to enlighten us on the topic of emergence of agri-tech in Sri Lanka. Thank you, sir. The audience can join us tomorrow at 11 a.m. about How to Start Online Agribusiness in Sri Lanka, conducted by Mr. Hasanga Padukka. Signing off from this webinar, I am Rotaractor Famila Faiz. Have a great day.
Have a great day. Thank you so much for your
Thank you,
opportunity.
sir. Thank
Good luck,
you.
guys.